นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนะมาสามิ In the Ovada Patimokkha, in which we find some of the most basic and important guidelines for our lives as samanas, and the most fundamental definition of the samana, or of the one who's left the household life, is one which stresses harmlessness, and this is a offering. This is something that we give the world. Through our way of life, that people may be inspired by what we do. They may be indifferent, or they may be contemptuous of it even, perhaps. But whatever the various reactions to a Buddhist monk, fear is probably highly unlikely to appear in somebody's mind. People see a Buddhist monk and they know that they're not dangerous to them. Animals even see Buddhist monks and they have a sense this is a harmless creature. And I think sometimes we can overlook just the beauty and the nobility of this offering that we make to the world. It's very unusual, isn't it, to be so scrupulous and so caring, even for the smallest kind of creature. Not just human beings, not just the cuddly, lovable kinds of creatures like Shetland ponies and fluffy cats, but even centipedes and geckos and biting ants. Just after you've been in the robes for a while, it's almost inconceivable that you would purposefully take the life of even a poisonous snake or a small poisonous ant. It just doesn't arise as a possibility in your mind. There's not even a kind of a choice. Shall I kill it or not? It's just something that it doesn't arise anymore in your mind. That's a wonderful thing, and something that arises through the power of sila, as much as through metta bhavana. In fact, these two things are very closely connected. That metta bhavana really only takes off and really is powerful when it is based on this level of sila, where you don't consider that your life and your comfort has any more meaning and significance than that of even a housefly or a mosquito. If you look at it completely logically, why? It's obvious, isn't it? Why should your life be any more valuable than that of a malarial mosquito? I can't think of any logical reason myself. So this sense of virtue and sila as an offering of dana, and the apayatana, the offering of fearlessness and protection to sentient beings. This is something, just living the life, doing our practice, that we're giving, we're refraining, we're abstaining from killing, harming, hurting in through actions, through speech, and gradually through mind also. And this not doing, this refraining, is a kind of creativity. This morning I was speaking to this group of art students, and I was mentioning to them how much I admire the Chinese brush paintings, in which perhaps only a very small proportion of the canvas is painted on, but the effect and the power of the picture is conveyed by the relationship between the painted form or the painted area and that which is not painted. In fact, the large blank area, white canvas, is what gives the black brush strokes their power, beauty. So you just say that what a waste of paper, big white area, haven't painted on it at all. It was rather ridiculous. But in terms of human behavior, sometimes we don't see that. I think many people don't really see that what you do, your actions, have weight, have beauty, integrity, nobility, because of the things that you don't do. And that skillful refraining from actions, from certain kinds of speech, or for certain kinds of imagination and proliferation. This is the creativity, and artists, writers mention this over and over again. And I think it was, can't remember now, perhaps D.H. Lawrence, who said that the art in writing is in editing. The art is in what you leave out. And many writers will say that it's much more difficult to write a very simple, clear style than a very ornate and complicated style. The simplification is the skill. And this is another aspect of our life, isn't it? This simplification, and making that a standard or something to come back to measure your practice also. Just how simple is your life? Is your life getting more complicated? If there are a lot of things going on and there's getting more complications, then needing to move away from the simplicity that the Buddha recommended for us. It's taking joy in simplicity that leads the mind to peace. What could be more simple than the samatha object? Whether it is the breathing process, or the mantra, or the concept of metta, or whatever. But the whole point of a samatha object is that it's not complicated, that it's actually going against the whole tendency for proliferation, or papancha, it's called in Pali. so we simplify our life in every aspect, in the external sphere, in our relationship, then with others and with the physical world. And we have certain abiding principles. Most important is the non-oppression of self and others. This is the principle that underlies the whole moral structure of Buddhist teachings, of whether it's the 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, 227 precepts. Being one devoted to harmlessness, harmlessness to others, harmlessness to oneself, one who has the welfare of self and others always in mind. The welfare of self and others is complementary. To say, if you really understand what your own welfare is, then you will not neglect the welfare of others. If you really understand what the welfare of others is, you won't neglect your own welfare. When there seems to be some conflict between them, then it usually means that you've lost the balance, or you've lost a clear understanding of what benefit really means. So we have the principle of non-harming, of reverence for life, unqualified reverence for life. And we have the principle of honesty and respect for other people's property, but honesty in every aspect of our life. And honesty here, including sense of non-deceit, non-trickiness, non-hypocrisy, not trying to appear in a way which is not a true reflection of how we are, not trying to hide our faults or to exaggerate our good points, or perhaps not trying to exaggerate our bad points, and considering that to be humility. A sense of clarity and honesty. And it work again. You see this kind of two-way process. So just to say, the more honest we are with ourselves about what we're feeling, what we're thinking, then the easier we find it to be honest with other people. Conversely, the more we train ourselves to be honest in our external dealings, then the easier it becomes to be honest with what's happening within us. No obstacle to honesty is usually a sense of self, isn't it, or some kind of attachment to an idea of how we are, or how we would like to be, and then finding it difficult, finding resistance to owning up to those things which don't fit that picture. Sometimes we feel embarrassed about the truth, embarrassed with other people, embarrassed towards ourselves. So that kind of integrity and honesty and kind of unflinching gaze is a power, a strength to be developed. So as bhikkhus we have Vinaya rules and the not taking what is not given, in our tradition, we're taught to take this from even the smallest object, something of a value of 1 baht, in the anusat, which is forms part of the Uposatha ceremony. Then a monk is cautioned not even to think of taking anything as much as a blade of grass. So that again is a radical shift. That's really leaving the world, isn't it? When you compare the normal state of mind of most people. I'm not talking about criminals and people who habitually break the law, but generally even what we call law-abiding citizens. There are very few who would not take advantage of some kind of little loophole if it was available to them, who are not willing to just to bend their principles a little bit every now and again, but to take that absolute standard of honesty. Perhaps it's a little more common than someone taking a complete strict, if you like, scrupulous standard of non-harming. But still, it's an unusual thing, and to make that consciously make that a pole or a fundamental principle of your life in the world is extremely unusual. Because we consider the heart of our life, the essence of our life, the putting forth of effort, the abandonment of defilements, and the meditation practice, that we can overlook these beautiful accomplishments and things that we are practicing on a daily level, on a daily basis. Because it's so ordinary, and it's because it's not what you're doing, but it's what you're not doing. Refraining and abstaining from things is not dramatic, is it? It's not something you don't see quite great progress in non-harming, or in non-acquisitiveness, or not intending to take things which are not yours. But it's a treasure, and it's merit, it's parami. It's something which is accumulating and maturing in your heart. But it's a matter of remembering it, recollecting it, bringing up to refresh and to give joy to your heart, to seeing the beauty of virtue. The Buddha is saying that sila is the most beautiful ornament, and seeing the beauty of it. Seeing the beauty and the wonder, like of group of young men, most of you young. I'm getting on a bit more now in ajahn vipassana, but being able to live a celibate life. I mean, this is almost unbelievable to many people in the world. They assume either that we have some kind of homosexual relationships, or that we masturbate, or that we have some kind of sexual release, and people these days don't think it's possible. Hardly credit the idea that a community of young men can live in a completely chaste way and not be completely screwed up, repressed, misogynist, or whatever. But we do it very successfully, and it's something that's it's hard for for most of us, if not, it's difficult, if not difficult all the time, then there are certain periods of time when it's difficult, and it's a struggle for almost everybody. But it's something that to take pride in, that you can do that. And it's only through taking this very scrupulous standard that we can begin to understand the whole nature of sexuality, to see its conditioned nature, to see how it arises, passes away, and seeing the suffering involved in it, and seeing how impersonal it is, what feeds it, what gives power to it, whether it can be physical conditions, can be food, can be thinking, and indulgence in imagination is something which is conditioned. But we can only have a distance from it, be able to reflect on it and see it for what it is, by refraining from the physical, verbal expression of it. And this is an important point with defilements, that we have to pin them down on the mental level before we can let go of them. And the way you pin something down on the mental plane is that you refrain, consciously refrain or endure through the intention to express that defilement physically or verbally. And this is where the relationship between sila, samadhi and panya becomes very clear. As long as you're still expressing sexual feelings physically, or indulging in speech, lascivious speech or careless speech, sexual matters, then you can never pin it down. It's moving, it's still receiving energy, you're still keeping it in motion, you're still feeding the flames. So we, as celibate monks, we take a whole new stance towards our sexual feelings and towards women and the half of the human race, looking on women who are older than ourselves, trying to look on them as mothers. If they're just a few years older than ourselves, as older sisters, a few years younger than ourselves, as younger sisters, or very small children as our children, and substituting these kind of wholesome perceptions of women for the sensual. And this is again a wonderful gift that you can give women. An attractive woman comes into the sala or comes into the monastery, and you refrain from indulging in sexual perceptions, sexual thoughts about that woman, and substitute it with wholesome reflections, whether it is consciously trying to perceive the woman as a sister, or wishing that person freedom from suffering, may they be well, substituting with metta. There are many different ways of doing this, but it's a wonderful gift that you can give someone, the gift of wholesome response to them as a human being, rather than just following the kind of instinctive animal obsession with some particular aspect of their physical appearance or their physical body. And this is you can really feel this as a sense of elevation, of being lifted from the animal level to the human level, from the gross to the refined. We have a sense of sobriety, sense of, before that perhaps we'll talk about the sense of love of truth. This was something that really struck me reading somewhere, that the book about the Jatakas, and saying that the Bodhisattva, the Buddha to be, through his huge number of lives throughout the different realms and different kinds of births, broke every kind of precept except for that of telling lies. There's no Jataka story, as far as I'm aware of, where you find a bodhisattva telling a lie. Sometimes he kills, steals, commits adultery, gets drunk, I think even, but you won't find the bodhisattva lying, as far as I know. This is it's an incredible thing. So the power of that. So you find in many lifetimes the bodhisattva has this power that comes from his speech, where he makes a kind of adhitān. I have never in my life done this or done that. By the power of this, of these words, may such and such happen, and it happens. And this is a marvelous, magical kind of thing, that the truth has some kind of power which manifests itself in the physical world. It can actually affect events, can affect things in the most marvelous kind of way when someone's built up that power of truth. By drawing on that power of truth and making a solemn declaration of truth, and the most amazing things can be affected, as can be seen from many occasions in the career of the bodhisattva. Taking a real joy and a pride, wholesome pride, in caring for the truth. And we have one word the Buddha used was satyanuraka, caring for the truth, loving the truth, being devoted to truth, and being careful to distinguish between what you know and what you believe and what you think, what you perceive, not confusing them. Often when people say they know something, they mean they believe it. So see this in members of other religions, when they have a strong faith in something and they consider that to be knowledge. The Buddha said you care for the truth by being very scrupulous in distinguishing between what you know as a direct experience and what you believe. And we have the devotion to sobriety. And sobriety is doesn't have such a sort of miserable, teetotaling, stiff collars, but this sobriety is that recognition of how infinitely superior sharpness and clarity of mind is to altered states of consciousness. When I after my travels and adventures in the East, in India, on my way back to England, I stopped off to visit a lady friend in mountains in Austria, and I always remember that she was away for a while, and I was in this house by myself, and flicking through some of her books, and I came across this session of questions and answers with Lama Govinda. I think someone of Westerners in India had asked him all these questions, and he gave a marvelous answer to one question, which is one of those times when something's just you read it at just the right time for you. And someone asked Lama Govinda, said, "What do you think of mind-expanding drugs?" And he said, "Well, if you've got an ignorant mind, all you get is expanded ignorance." And I thought it was so right on the spot. And yeah, I mean, if you're altering mind-expanding, mind-altering drugs, altered states of consciousness, it's all within the sphere of darkness, isn't it? You're still playing around with different modes of ignorance. You're not actually going beyond. You're not transcending. You are transcending one particular state of ignorance, but you're still in the same building. You haven't got out of the building. You're still in the prison. So this sobriety is that turning away from the whole razzmatazz of strange and unusual experiences and visions and physiological, mental states that are available through chemical means, and taking a delight in the simple, down-to-earth clarity of awareness of the eye seeing forms, the ear hearing sounds, the nose and odours, the tongue and flavours, the body and sensations, the mind and ideas, and seeing, being with things as they are, and taking joy in that. And coming more and more to focus on the one who knows, the knower, the knowing. And this is the great mystery of our life. We don't want to fuzz and confuse that. We want to clarify it. This is as we start to sort of clear away all the garbage from the mind, and the sense of knowing becomes clearer and sharper. And Lumpur makes a real point of this. He talks about the jit and jai, and jai is meaning the sort of sense of equanimity, the clarity of knowing, as he calls that, the jai, and the thinking, feeling, perceiving mind is the jit. This is his way of talking, and he gives a very simple way of understanding what he's talking about. He says, just hold your breath for a few moments. Your thinking stops. He says that's the jai, and then start breathing again. And as the thinking reappears, he says that's the jit. And he talks about getting more and more in contact with the jai. And as the mind becomes calm in meditation, he doesn't talk about a samadhi nimitta, or a mental counterpart to the breath, but he talks about turning towards the one who knows the breath. So as the breath becomes more and more refined, then the sense of knowing the breath becomes more and more prominent. And he says, turn away from the breath and go into the one who knows the breath, and that will take you to appana samadhi. So he's sharpening this sense of knowing, being the one who knows, and that is what takes you to peace. And this is another technique used by one of the great meditation masters. But this ability to go from the obsession with the content of experience to come back to the state of experiencing, and that which is experiencing is that which is simplifying and bringing the mind more and more together. It's becoming more and more composed and more one-pointed. So, recognize these principles and consciously cultivate these principles of harmlessness, of honesty, integrity, chastity, chasteness, love of truth, devotion to truth, sobriety, and above all, their constant clarification and sharpening of the sense of knowing. So I'd like to leave the evening talk at this point.